everybody. Welcome to the Fit Life podcast, and I'm your host, Jackie Labadia. We are switching gears a little bit this week. My kids are starting um, having like a new routine, which is interesting. My daughter is now joining my son at the preschool that he goes with to, and we switched the days that they're going. So they're now going on Mondays. And so this means that I'm switching my podcast days because it's the best day for me to do this is when my kids aren't home. So I feel like it'll be a good schedule for them though. Like kind of kick off the week, the start of the week, they go to the preschool and then tomorrow and Wednesday I'm usually at my other job. So it'll just kind of be these like 3 days at the beginning of the week and then we get Thursday to Sunday home together. So I think this will work out really nicely. And it's like a nice kickoff for me where like I can use my Mondays as like my Monday reset slash like meal prep and things that I need to get done for the week and kind of get me into like a good frame of mind for the week going forward. So I'm really looking forward to this. Hopefully, my microphone is picking me up. Anyways, I have been sick. Um, I knew this was going to happen. Like, I was watching pretty much everybody around me get sick, either with colds or flus or COVID or whatever. Like, the stomach bug is going around, and it just seems to be like kind of haywire right now. So, I knew my turn was coming, and thankfully, it's just a head cold, but um, I'm going to talk about this. So, the cough is going to come out to, like, show its presence. Um, yeah, it's just a head cold, but man, the fatigue always is like the piece that always just like absolutely annihilates me. Um, I feel like the other symptoms I can deal with, but when I get hit hard with the fatigue, it's not just fatigue, it's not just tiredness and like body aches, it's like brain fog, not being able to think straight, make decisions, or want to make decisions, and all of that. So it just makes it so much harder for me to be present and to like um not stay connected, that's not the right word I'm looking for, but like have that presence as a coach to be sure that I'm there for my clients, to be asking them questions and all of these other things. So I just feel, yeah, like a little, I guess a little bit disconnected. Um so it's hard. So anyway, I feel like knock on wood, we're turning a corner. I said this on social media on Thursday or Friday. I was like, oh, my energy levels are back up, and then like the next day, it was just like, no, that was just a hard no. So anyways, haven't been working out. I had started a new workout program last week, and I got like one session in before I got sick. So I'm just kind of like pushing it back a little bit and just going to kind of take it easy until I'm feeling fully like I feel like my energy supply is like kind of back intact. I feel like because I feel like today I'm turning a corner, but I'm still kind of wary about how much energy I try to like take up, just in being mindful that I could make myself crash pretty hard. So we're just kind of focusing on like I did some meal prep before I came down here. Just to try to get myself set up for like from a nutrition perspective. Been drinking my water, not sitting as much on the couch. Like the last few days I've been really like one with the couch. I have been the pure couch potato. I've been binge watching Parenthood on Netflix and I'm really enjoying it. It's a really cute show. It kind of reminds me of like a less funny version of Modern Family kind of thing, but very relatable in terms of parenting and stuff. And yeah, like I've been really enjoying that. Um, uh, now I'm hoping that this microphone's not going to be picking up on me sniffling, so you guys don't have to hear that throughout this whole episode. So yeah, so that's been my week basically. Um, I don't feel like I'm doing great. Like if I were to like rate how my life is right now, I'd feel like I'm at like a 5. Like from an emotional stress standpoint, I feel okay, but I also feel like I'm not thriving either. And I don't know, I think that could be like a number of things, not just being sick, but even just like I'm on week 3 of my birth control, so I know that I'm adjusting. I tried to be in a bit of a cut last week, but then I got sick, and that's just been like thrown onto the wayside. And I am going to continue with that because those first couple of days of being in a cut felt really good, and I felt like something that I really needed to do was just like dial in my nutrition and see where I was there. Um, but my digestion hasn't been great. I have been sleeping okay, I think, for the most part. Um, I'm just not feeling like physically, yeah, from a physiological standpoint, not just from sickness, but like digestion health and things like that. I'm feeling a little bit fluffier. I'm not feeling like fully great in a physical sense, I guess. I also don't feel like I'm doing a great job with catching up, keeping on top of things lately, and I don't know what it is. Again, I was sick, but also it was even prior to that, just like trying to get things done off of my to-do list and keeping up with clients and all of these other things. I'm just in this funny little hole, and hopefully, I mean, not hopefully, but I'm just working towards digging myself out of it. And the one thing about getting sick is that because I've been sedentary, I have been trying to do a few tasks here and there, like on the computer, that I can catch up with. Um, but have not been on social media and, talking about things on there too much. But at least the one thing I could do is try to be kind of consistent with is this podcast. And if you guys have any ideas for podcast topics or anything like that, that would be super helpful in terms of like, where are we right now? Like, what are we talking about? Like, what are we interested in? What do we have questions about? So that being said, I did want to do this podcast today on accountability and like calling yourself out on your own bullshit and stuff like that, because we're getting to the end of January. And usually we see at the end of January a lot of people who kind of set out with New Year's resolutions start falling off of like the bandwagon, so to speak. And usually it has to do with, too high of expectations, trying to do too many things at once, and basically like setting yourself up for failure. Like you're just like doing so many things or trying to do so many things because you think you need to change so many things that it just turns into something that is like impossible to sustain. And then we feel like people being like, oh well, this just isn't for me, I guess. Like I gave it a shot and like it's not working, so I'm going to stop. Um so this is where we see a lot of people like kind of hit that wall, and um they fall to the wayside, and they are no longer pursuing those same like New Year's resolutions that they might have set out for at the beginning of the month. um I gotta say, my Start Strong challenge, the girls that are in that group right now are doing an incredible job. They're posting wins on the Facebook page every day. I'm seeing like in other groups where I didn't really specify what a win would entail. And that's okay, because what the idea of sharing wins are it's basically almost like a gratitude practice, right? It's a way to kind of find something good about your day. So even if you didn't hit your steps or get a workout in or hit your nutrition or anything like that, what was something that was really good that happened in your day? And that's what I ask my clients to share. Like what was some kind of win that you had today, big or small? There could have been anything. It could have been as small as like I hit my water today. And for some people that's actually a really big deal because they've always struggled with their water. So it depends on the person, right? A win might be like, yo, I actually got like a really good, decent night's of sleep for the first time in months. Or it could be something like had this big presentation at work and I killed it. Or, something along those lines. Or as small as like, I had a good hair day. And the idea is that kind of gratitude piece of finding something that was good in your day and figuring out like what was what happened that was good in your day. And we know from research and stuff like that that this kind of mind frame sorry framework in your mindset is very, very, very positively influence, and maintaining that level of like positive outlook is very beneficial in your overall mental health, in your moods, in your belief in yourself and self-efficacy and stuff like that. So it's a small tidbit of the challenge that we do, but it can go a long way if you are really looking for things that actually went really well. And a lot of the wins that I'm finding that are going on these past couple of weeks are these girls actually achieving these milestone pieces of the lifestyle pieces that we're trying to influence, or we're trying to implement. Um, whether that's hitting their steps for the first time ever, whether that's hitting their protein or their fiber goals or their calorie goals, or like, really trying to put the pieces together for themselves so that they are hitting these targets that we're trying to look for. And that to me is like so inspiring and so empowering to see, and knowing that these girls are actually like sitting down and being like, okay, what do I need to change right now, and what's going to work best for me so that I can hit these numbers, and I know that I can actually optimize my nutrition and optimize my workouts and optimize my daily routine so that I can actually sustain this. So that has been really really cool to see. And I have to say, like, with every challenge that I ran, I get more and more and more of these kind of like shifts in the groups that we have, and like how they show up and how they improve and how they implement what we're trying to teach. So that has been so 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 cool. um so anyway, I needed to share that because like that has been like such a positive thing, um and such a really, yeah, I like, I'm inspired by it. And like these are the girls that I'm coaching, but their abilities of like showing up and actually doing these things and asking each other questions and like supporting each other has been really really awesome. Um but yeah, how do we maintain this level of accountability? So, one of the reasons why I really like group challenges is because there is that sense of community. There is that sense of like connectiveness between not just me and somebody else, but me and a group of people that are all on the same level, and that can ask each other questions about like, hey, what works, what doesn't work, what kind of recipes you guys have that like maybe I can try that you really liked. um like, what does your morning routine look like, what does your evening routine look like? So like, it's not just relying on me as a coach, which I don't mind doing, but having that sense of community and that sense of connection with these other girls is a really good way of maintaining some level of accountability by seeking out that support. Now, the thing with accountability, and I think this goes by individual and what they kind of think accountability looks like. Um, you have the people who think that accountability, especially with a coach, are the people who are like, I need you to hold me accountable by messaging me every day and making sure I'm hitting my goals and making sure that I'm showing up and all of these things. And to me, I'm like, that's not accountability, because accountability, even there's different levels to this, right? Like I can be an outlier, like an external piece of accountability to you as your coach. And we do that by doing weekly check-ins, or I have clients who've identified like, and I think this is the other thing too. I have clients that I might not hear from for a while, and it's because they are either doing really really well and they don't feel like they need my support, or it's because they're not doing well and they feel like embarrassed to check in with me. And I really try to make sure that everyone knows that there's no such thing. I'm not here to judge you. I'm not here to rip you apart when you're not showing up for one reason or another. That's not my job. That's not what I'm here for, and that's not going to get you anywhere either. Like if I were to sit here and judge you and tell you all the things that you're doing wrong and why aren't you showing up for yourself, that's not going to do anything for our relationship as a coach client relationship. You're not going to trust me. You're not going to want to share anything with me if that's what you're going to get, right? And it's also just not the person that I am. And um but also, having like showing up for on my side with that level of like toughness is not always going to keep you accountable as it is either. Accountability can come from an external source such as a coach or such as a group, but you also have to be mindful enough and aware enough of when you need to use that external source. So whether that is checking in and being like, "Hey, I'm really struggling, like what can I do different?" or what should I do? Like, what should my next steps be? Or, hey, I'm really overwhelmed right now. And if I'm too overwhelmed, I know that I'm not going to end up doing, X, Y, and Z that I know that I need to do. What is like a plan B that I can do in this moment? Right? Like, it's using your support system and making sure that you are actually communicating where your head is at in a way that is going to allow you to obtain the support that you need in that moment. That is a piece of accountability. But there's also this inside accountability too, right? And that's what I'm kind of going to allude to a little bit more in this podcast, because I think this is something that a lot of people struggle with because they rely so heavily on outside pieces of things that keep them accountable. Um so just as like it's impossible to hire somebody to, like people joke like, "Oh, need you to follow me around and slap the donuts out of my hand." Again, like, yes, that's an outside piece of accountability, and it would a it that some and a piece um having somebody to do something as personal as that 24 hours a day would cost a hell of a lot more than one-on-one online coaching for one thing. um and just from like a coach, obviously, like I'm not saying that this is something that people actually do, but when I have a client that has that level of expectation from me of like messaging them every single day, I will then turn it around and be like, well, how about you message me every single day and I'll look out for it? Or just telling me like, I know if I don't hear from you for a while, I'll check in knowing that if I'm not hearing from you, then that's not a good sign kind of thing. So if we know that about each other, then I know how I can better show up as a coach for you, but we're not going to be placing unrealistic expectations on your coach to make sure that you are showing up when this is on you to do. So this is the other thing too, right? Like it's not just about if you have a coach or if you don't have a coach. If you have some sort of goal that requires you to change your behaviors or develop a skill, no one else can do that for you. That's 100% on you, and how you are going to change what you're doing, how you are going to show up, how you are going to pivot, and how you are going to try to like look to outside sources to learn from and to utilize their knowledge and skills so that you can then implement it into whatever goal you are seeking out. Right? Like, and that's exactly why coaching and group coaching for like the challenges that I do can be so beneficial. And that's why they can keep you accountable, because it's not just the piece there that's checking in where you're like, hey, I'm showing up. It's also you using that as accountability and information for when things are getting hard. And then you can kind of like take preventative measures by saying like, hey, this is where I'm at. What do you guys do, or what do you recommend, or what can I do like to change this so that I can still continue to show up? So that's again like going back to that external kind of accountability, like that external validation, that external piece that can help with the accountability part. But ultimately, there has to be some sort of internal accountability. There has to be a voice in your head that is going to call you out and that is going to help you to continue to move forward and recognize the patterns that are not going to be helpful for you. So this is what I say is like you got to call yourself out on your own bullshit. We all have bullshit. We all have patterns and behaviors and mindset, like, and thoughts and stories that we tell ourselves that are not going to be helpful when it comes to achieving a certain goal. These are the things that are ultimately going to hold us back, or are ultimately going to lead us to I don't want to say fail, but probably to give up. So this is why like so many people give up on certain things, because they have weird unrealistic expectations about how something should look, so that they're setting themselves up in a place that is not going to be sustainable. But also, when things do get hard, and they do at some point for everybody, they have a story in their head that they can fall back on. They revert back into their own little comfort bubble, and that's it. So I think it's important to recognize that we all have these thoughts and patterns and things like that that we ultimately retreat to as a source of comfort, right? Changing your behaviors, learning a new skill, chasing a goal will require some level of discomfort. And that's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to be uncomfortable. And we have to recognize that that's just part of the process. Getting comfortable with discomfort and being uncomfortable is probably one of the best things that you can do to ensure some level of success. You are going to be uncomfortable. You are going to be tired some days. You are going to be hungry some days. You are going to have days where it's overwhelming and you're not really sure how to handle it. These are all just examples of discomfort, especially when it comes particularly to some sort of health and fitness goal. Um, so we have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. So but we also have to recognize that when there is discomfort, it's easy for our brains to tell us a certain story about why we should not continue to pursue it. Maybe it's something like, this isn't worth it, you're just going to fail anyways. Maybe it's something like, this other thing sounds way better right now than this. So like maybe it's, my bed feels way better and sounds a lot better than getting up to do a workout. It could be, the couch and eating a bag of potato chips sounds way better than going to the gym. Like there's different things that we might tell ourselves, and different things that we know that feel really good and that are very comfortable, that we might kind of like by nature, what's the word, gravitate towards, even though it's not the thing that's going to get us closer to our goals. That is when you need to recognize, and that those are the patterns that we need to recognize, right, in ourselves. There's this, there has to be some sort of level of awareness of like what these things are within ourselves, because they're going to vary from person to person. There's different tells themselves. um so you have to recognize what those stories are within you, so that you know when you can call yourself out on it. So an example would be like, again, like going back to the couch potato scenario. There's going to be times where it's cold outside, you don't want to get your coat on to go to the gym and drive there and all this stuff. It sounds so much better to be on the couch and to eat a bag of potato chips and just veg out for a night. And although there might be a time and a place for that, ultimately when it comes to getting healthier, that is not going to help you, right? So when you find yourself like wanting that, like yearning to just be the couch potato instead of going to the gym, that's when you have to kind of like have that sense of self-talk, where you're like, this is the story I'm telling myself. This is not going to be helpful for me. I need to go to the gym, because if I don't go to the gym tonight, maybe I'm not going to be able to make it tomorrow because of X, Y, and Z. Or like maybe I've already missed a workout because I already did X, Y, and Z that didn't, that took over that gym time or something like that. Um so you have to see that picture and to recognize those patterns in yourself, and being like, no, like this, being the couch potato and eating bags of chips has gotten me nowhere in terms of how I feel about myself, how I see myself from like a confidence perspective. The bag of chips is going to make me feel like shit, and then I'm going to sleep like shit, and then tomorrow I'm going to feel like shit, because that's not going to be helpful. So, and then it can also just be like, you've done so much of that over the holidays, Jackie, like it's time to just like, cut the crap and like get going with life and doing things that are actually going to make you feel good. But there's things that are going to make us feel good, like I'm not going to lie, like sitting on a couch and eating a bag of potato chips can feel good for a short-term period of time. We do get some level of dopamine hit from that, but the long term thing that's actually going to make us feel good is going to go to the gym. And even though going to the gym and working out is uncomfortable in the moment, it does give us a dopamine hit. It does allow us to feel good for the long term and continue to get those good feelings of like energy and mood and all of those things. So again, like take like when you're pulling yourself out of this story and you're trying to like convince yourself to go to the gym, these what arguing with yourself in your head is not always going to be successful, but you still have to just like physically get yourself to the gym, even if you don't really want to go. So, this is that part about, you hear this a lot in the health and fitness industry about like discipline over motivation kind of thing. And I would say that this is a level of discipline in the sense that like you have to know how to talk yourself into going, even when you don't want to go. And this is what is happening in that moment. It's like there's always that other story that's telling you that there's something else that's going to be better than going to the gym, and you have to have that other side where you're like, yeah, that does sound really good, but I know that I will feel really good if I go to the gym and I make this happen anyways. Sorry. So this applies to right now in this like time of the year where it's so easy to want to stay inside and not do the thing and to like hole up and to be a couch potato and watch your favorite shows and eat all of the like sweets and good things that might not necessarily align with your health and fitness goals, but it feels good in the moment to do it. But then, in 7 days' time, when your digestion is off and you've been sedentary and you're seeing the scale go back up after like doing a few weeks of like being dialed in, um, like those aren't the things that are going to get you towards your goals. And this is a good time to really evaluate exactly what you're doing to see if it's actually something that is sustainable. And if it is, then there we also have to kind of evaluate your expectation of how you're showing up. There is another piece of this where it's that like all or nothing mindset, and I see a lot of this where um we're getting sick or our kids are getting sick or something that is like influencing how you're able to show up in these things. And even if your plan is something that is sustainable, um you still might not be able to show up perfectly 100% of the time, and we have to know that that's also okay. So obviously, optimally, we're showing up 100%, 100% of the time, but realistically, that's not going to happen. Realistically, your 100% is going to look different on a day to day basis, but we have to have that expectation that this is how it's going to go because this is how life is. Like, life is not the exact same thing every single day. So, we have to know how to pivot and how to adapt our routine so that we can still show up in some way without completely holding ourselves back and without completely expecting that everything is going to be perfect 100% of the time. I recently so going back to sharing the wins that we share on in our group challenge, I did have somebody recently who was like, I did not have any wins today. I didn't hit any of my targets. It was a bad day. I was sick or something happened. Um, so I didn't have any wins. So that was one of those things where it was like, no, there's always some sort of win. Or also, the other side of this that can happen is that if you see yourself not being able to hit these targets or do, or, like check off the things that we are looking to complete, instead of thinking of it as like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be able to do any of this today, so like fuck it, I'm just going to call it off, I'm not going to win anything or whatever. This is where we want to kind of be like, okay, you know what, my workout's not going to happen today. I don't think I'm going to be able to hit my nutrition markers because I don't have control over my food. But then we can look at, what do we have control over? So we still have control over how much movement we get. you don't need to carve out a walk to get movement in. You can make sure you're not sitting on your ass all day. You can park further away from the places that you're going. You can pace the arena if your kid's playing hockey. You can like walk around your house and do housework. There are so many different ways to move, and we can track that via your step count to see how much you're moving, but you don't need to carve out like an intentional set time in order to get movement in. Like that can happen by nature in the things that you're doing. So, can we get creative? Can you walk on your walking pad as you're taking work calls instead of sitting at your desk? Like there are things that we can do here that can improve that, and it doesn't have to be set in stone in how that's going to look. When we don't have control over our nutrition, okay, how can we make the best out of this situation? Can we, instead of thinking about, well, okay, well, I don't have control over what I'm going to eat, so I'm just going to order pizza, how about we look around our environment and look at, okay, what grocery stores do I have access to? What kind of fast food out restaurants around me have healthier options that I can choose from? What kind of modifications to food can I make in order to make it a little bit better in alignment with my goals? And this doesn't have to be from a calorie perspective, right? Like we want like healthy food. If we're not in control of our foods, and maybe we're not tracking, or it depends on the situation, we don't always have to be worried just about calories, but instead we can look at what can we add to this to make it more valuable. Can we add a source of protein to this to make sure that I'm getting that sense of protein and make sure that it's going to make me feel full when I'm done eating this? Can we look at the different colors that are on our plate so that we can ensure that there's probably some sort of plant and fiber source on this plate in order so that I can also feel full and make sure that I'm getting that sense of fiber? Like there's different things that we can look at in order to make the best out of a situation that we don't have necessarily full control over, but there are still pieces of that that you can control. Um, so this is what I mean by like holding yourself accountable in the sense of like when our stories are telling us that one thing got messed up or we don't have control, we have to kind of rein ourselves in and be like, no, like there's actually a lot that I can control here, and maybe it's not going to be like 100% optimal, but I can definitely make this better than what I would do in this in a situation where I just see this as like, okay, well, like a fuck it situation. um so there's these different layers, if so to speak, and different complexities that go into what accountability is and where that's going to come from when it comes from like that angel and that devil on your shoulder who are arguing back and forth about what you should do or what you have control over, or what your choices are. But also like, and that's your inner sense of accountability, right? Your inner sense of like recognizing different situations that like you're really just telling yourself stories about, or you're just really giving in to the things that are easier to do rather than the things that are harder to do but are more beneficial. And then there's that level of accountability where you can get that external sense of accountability from somebody like a coach or from a support group or something like that. So it's I hope this made sense. Like I hope my tangent made some sort of logical sense in terms of like this is how we call ourselves out on our bullshit, and how we recognize like these different situations where it can be really easy not to be accountable, but there's these different parts of accountability that when we get good at recognizing them, it's almost, I don't want to say it's easier to be accountable, but it's easier to convince yourself to do the thing that is going to align with your goals more. Um so there's that different sense of like, yeah, like where these things are going to come from, what situation that you're in that could make you kind of falter in terms of like keeping yourself aligned with your goals. um but there's always a way, to make it just like 1% better. There's always a way to recognize like what you do have control over, and making sure that, and understanding that the things that you have control over, you also have to manage your expectations about them, right? And making sure that we have the right kind of expectation when it comes to what these things should look like. So if you're in a rut right now, and if you're in a place in January and your expectations at the beginning of the month were way too high on yourself, there are different pieces that I would recommend that you focus on during this time. And for me, that would be tracking your food. So, assuming that for most people, I'm going to say like 95% of people right now did have some sort of fat loss goal at the beginning of the year. When it comes to fat loss, I would be tracking my food and making sure I'm in a calorie deficit. I would be moving my body, like like, so trying to aim anywhere between 7,500 to 10,000 steps a day minimum. If you're already like a really sedentary person, so maybe you're only hitting 4,000, 5,000 steps a day, increase that, but work your way up to 75,000 steps minimum. And then the third thing that I would be focusing on would be protein and fiber. And for a number of reasons, but mainly because it just makes being in a calorie deficit much easier. Actually, I'm going to add a third there. So protein, fiber, and water. So all three of those help with satiety, which helps with you being staying in a calorie deficit. And then there's so many other benefits that come from consuming those three things, from like a vitamin and mineral perspective, from a digestive perspective, from an inflammation perspective. But making sure you're getting an adequate amount of each of those things is very, very helpful in a calorie deficit phase as well. So if I were to choose three things to focus on, that are sustainable and that kind of simplify the process of fat loss, those would be the three things that I would be focusing on. So calorie deficit. So the easiest way to calculate a calorie deficit is to take your goal weight and multiply it by 12, and that should be the amount of calories that you're aiming to eat. Movement. So again, like 7,500 steps minimum, like ideally higher, depending on what your level of activity is right now. And then the third would be protein, fiber, water. So protein would be your goal. Actually, I usually do your current weight multiplied by 0.7, and that will give you the grams of protein that you should be eating right now. You can go as high as like 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight, but I find that to be really high for some women depending on how heavy they are. um so 0.7 grams per pound of body weight is a little bit more realistic. Fiber, 25 to 38 grams of fiber a day. Something else that a lot of people lack in terms of nutrients. So even getting that 25 grams of fiber a day is very, very helpful. It just means incorporating more fruits and vegetables into your diet, or it ideally. That's where I would start. But that can be very helpful in increasing that fiber. So from a digestive perspective, that's really helpful. From a satiety perspective, it's really helpful. Just like across the board, it's very helpful to get your fiber in. And then your water, which would be your body weight, half of your body weight in ounces of water per day. So if you weigh 100 pounds, you should be having 50 ounces of water a day. So do the math there. So yeah, those would be the three things that I would, if I were to say like, hey, if you want to make this sustainable, these are the three things that I would do, then those would be my top three. But otherwise, if you are in a place where you are struggling with your goals in health and fitness or anything like that, please feel free to message me. I'd be more than happy to help you. I'd be more than happy to give you some tips on how to make it more sustainable, how to like fight those inner stories that you are telling yourself, that are not helping you in your pursuit of health and fitness goals. It's a lot of mindset shifts. It's a lot of recognizing some pieces of yourself that you might not be aware of. And ultimately, honestly, health and fitness and like figuring out what works for you and what doesn't is so much based on your level of self-awareness and the things that you do in your day-to-day life and the things that you think about in your day-to-day life that influence how you choose to behave and how you make choices and stuff like that. That's like a huge part of of your ability to succeed. So having someone to kind of guide you and ask you questions that could be kind of like revealing in terms of like your level of awareness and like the things that you're doing in your day-to-day life from a behavior perspective, but also like a mindset perspective, can be very, very, very helpful. And if not that, going to therapy is very, very helpful with that as well. So, anyways, I'm going to end this here. I kind of feel like it was more of like a rant than anything. So, I hope that it made some sort of logical sense. I guess I'll find out when I upload this. Um, but yeah, I'm going to wrap it up here. Next podcast is going to be next Monday, which is February, what, 4th or 3rd or something like that? Oh my gosh. Okay, so January felt like the longest month ever, but somehow was also still very fast. So, anyways, we will see you in February. And yeah, I'll see you next time.